That was the moment I realized everything I thought I knew about my girlfriend Sarah and our future together was a complete, horrifying lie. I was standing in our living room, just 2 hours before her 30th birthday party was supposed to kick off, holding a ridiculously expensive, custom-made cake when she casually dropped the bomb. "Oh, by the way," she said, not even looking up from applying her lipstick, "I invited Mark, her ex-fiancé, the man she dated for 6 years, the man she almost married, who she swore was an ancient, long-forgotten relic of her past." My stomach plummeted. I felt a dizzying surge of disbelief, followed by a burning wave of betrayal that washed over me so fiercely, I almost dropped the cake. She saw the look on my face, a perfect storm of confusion and anger, and her voice immediately took on that defensively rationalizing tone I'd come to dread. "Don't be dramatic, Alex. We're all adults now. It's been years. We run in the same extended circles. And honestly, it would have been weirder not to invite him. It's my birthday. I want to celebrate with everyone who's important to me." Everyone who's important to her, huh? So, I want you to tell me, honestly right now, before I dive into the absolute chaos that followed, was I wrong for what I did next? Or would you have walked right out that door too? Let me take you back to the beginning, to set the scene for this whole unbelievable mess. Sarah and I had been together for almost 2 years. Our relationship was, by all outward appearances, fantastic. We lived together in a cozy apartment. We had great chemistry. We made each other laugh. And we talked seriously about buying a house and getting engaged within the next year. I was completely, utterly in love with her. I truly thought she was my endgame, my person. The one persistent, tiny dark cloud in our otherwise sunny sky was Mark. He was the ghost in the machine, the elephant in the room that Sarah always pretended wasn't there. Early on, she'd told me the whole story. 6 years, a big ring, a wedding planned. And then it all fell apart because he supposedly got cold feet. Focusing too much on his career and pushing her aside, she made him out to be this successful, yet emotionally stunted workaholic who broke her heart. She painted herself as the victim, the one who picked up the pieces and learned to love again. I bought it. Hook, line, and sinker. I trusted her. I trusted that X meant X, and that their chapter was definitively closed, sealed, and archived. I mean, we're talking about the guy who was the subject of her most tearful late-night confessions and her most bitter anecdotes. Every time his name came up, usually through a mutual friend, she'd dismiss him with a shrug and a tight dismissive smile, saying, "Oh, Mark, he's ancient history. We're civil, I guess, but that's it." This kept my anxiety about him in check, because what choice did I have but to believe the woman I was planning to spend my life with? The weeks leading up to her 30th birthday were a blur of planning. I went all out. I booked a private room at her favorite upscale restaurant for dinner with her closest friends and family. I organized the casual party at our place for the wider circle, and I even flew her sister in from across the country as a surprise. I spent days designing and commissioning a massive, nerdy-themed birthday cake she would adore. Every ounce of my effort, my time, and my money was poured into making this a milestone birthday she'd never forget. I saw this party as more than just a celebration of her life. It was a quiet celebration of us and the serious direction our commitment was taking. We were on the verge of the next big step, and I wanted her to feel completely cherished. The guest list was a big topic of discussion, obviously. We went over it multiple times. There were friends from college, co-workers, cousins, and old roommates. Mark's name never came up, not once, when I specifically asked about a couple of people she hadn't seen in a while. I even half-jokingly asked, "Are you sure you don't want to invite that guy you haven't talked to since high school?" Just to be thorough. She laughed, looked me in the eye, and said, "No, sweetie. Just the people I love and want around me. Those words now feel like the cruelest kind of lie. So, when she dropped that mark bomb, my first reaction wasn't even anger. It was a profound, icy cold confusion. I put the cake down very deliberately, walked over to her and asked, "When exactly did you invite him, Sarah?" She sighed, clearly annoyed by my lack of adult composure. "A few days ago. Look, I saw him at a mutual friend's engagement party last weekend. He was really mature about everything. He wished me a happy birthday and said he'd love to drop by if I was doing anything. So I sent him a text. She sent a text to her ex-fiancé, inviting him to a private celebration I had organized, without a single word to me, her current boyfriend, the man who was paying for almost all of it. The lack of consideration was a punch to the gut. But then, the real red flag went up. I pressed her again. You told me you were just civil with him. You haven't mentioned seeing him. Why the sudden last-minute invite to a party at our home?" Her eyes darted away, and she got defensive. "I ran into him, Alex. It was spontaneous. Why are you making such a big deal out of this? It's just a couple of hours. I swear you get so insecure about him. There's nothing going on. He's just a friend." A friend. He went from a painful memory to just a friend and an impromptu party guest in the span of a single week, and I wasn't allowed to question it. It was like watching the foundation of my relationship crumble in real time. I felt cheap, like the stand-in guy, the placeholder, until the original option decided to show up again. All my efforts, the cake, the surprise, the money, it all felt worthless. Because the person who was supposed to be the most important guest was a man from her past, and his presence was more important to her than my comfort, my trust, or my feelings. The guests started to trickle in, and the party was in full swing, but I was a wreck. I was going through the motions, forcing smiles, and feeling this cold knot in my chest. Sarah was oblivious, buzzing around, being the perfect hostess. Then, around 8:30 p.m., the doorbell rang. It was him, Mark. He walked in, tall, impeccably dressed, carrying a ridiculously enormous bouquet of lilies, her favorite, which I had just learned the hard way, and a small, elegantly wrapped gift. The way Sarah's face lit up when she saw him wasn't the polite smile she gave her cousin. It was an unrestrained, genuine, almost giddy spark of recognition and pleasure that she hadn't even given me when I handed her the keys to the rental car I'd gotten for the weekend. The way they hugged was too long, too familiar, too intimate for just civil exes who run in extended circles. He immediately went into a long, animated conversation with her, completely dominating her attention and making her laugh with an easy familiarity that made my teeth ache. I watched from across the room, feeling like an interloper in my own home, at a party I'd thrown for my girlfriend. He didn't even acknowledge me beyond a brief, cool nod that said, "You're the current novelty. I'm the legend." Every casual touch, every shared glance, every inside joke felt like a subtle, calculated erasure of me. I tried to talk to her, to pull her aside. "I need to speak to you," I whispered urgently as she walked past, trying to refill her drink. "Not now, Alex. I'm busy, can't you see?" she snapped, barely slowing down, her eyes already back on Mark as he recounted a funny story. That was the straw. The full-blown realization hit me. This wasn't about being adults. This was about validation. This was about parading her success. Me, the happy, loving boyfriend, the nice apartment, the big party, in front of the man who left her. And she was perfectly fine, using me as the prop to do it. So that's the situation I was in, standing in my own kitchen, staring at the elaborate, untouched cake I'd poured my heart and wallet into, while the woman I loved was giggling a little too loudly with the man she almost married, completely sidelining me. I felt humiliated, not just by her, but for her, for putting both of us through this manipulative charade. I had to make a choice. Be the passive, miserable boyfriend who lets his territory be invaded, or stand up for my self-respect and the sanctity of our relationship. Before I tell you exactly what I did next, what the climax of this whole awful night was, and how I finally got my revenge, I want you to pause the video right now and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have swallowed your pride and stayed? Would you have caused a scene? Or would you have found a way to make a quiet, dignified exit? Let me know, because I'm genuinely curious what a rational person would do in that gut-wrenching moment. I walked back into the living room, a quiet storm brewing inside me. Sarah and Mark were still huddled together, now joined by a few of her closest friends who were listening raptly, almost as if he were the guest of honor. I took a deep breath. I knew a screaming match would only make me look like the unstable, jealous guy she was already labeling me as. I needed a cleaner, more definitive break. I needed an act of self-respect so profound it would make her question everything. I marched straight up to the dining table, where the gifts were piled up. I found Mark's elegantly wrapped present, a small, heavy-looking box, and picked it up. Mark noticed me and paused his story, a patronizing smirk on his face. Sarah looked at me with open annoyance. I ignored them both, walking purposefully over to the fridge where the birthday cake was chilling. The cake was a custom, 3-tier masterpiece, a miniature rendering of the Millennium Falcon, because she's a massive Star Wars fan. It cost me over $500. I carefully lifted the cake box out and placed it right next to Mark's gift on the table. Then, I looked straight at Sarah, my voice calm, almost unnervingly level. Sarah, this is your birthday party. I planned it, I paid for it, and I wanted you to have a great time, I said, loud enough for the small crowd near them to hear. The room started to quiet down, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. But I cannot stand here and pretend everything is okay. You invited your ex-fiancé, the man you almost married, to the party I organized, and you spent the entire night with him, not 2 feet away from me. You made it clear that my feelings, my trust, and my presence are less important than validating your own past. Her mouth dropped open. She started to sputter. Alex, don't you dare. But I cut her off, my gaze fixed on her. No, you don't dare. You don't get to treat me like a backup plan and then demand I be mature about it. I am not the supporting actor in your relationship drama. I'm leaving. This party is over for me. I paused, letting the silence hang heavy. Then, I picked up Mark's gift, held it up, and asked, "Since you're such great friends now, Mark, maybe you can take this." And I calmly placed his gift on the table. Then, I turned and picked up my beautiful Millennium Falcon cake. I looked at Sarah one last time, with what I hoped was an expression of pure, resolute disappointment, and I said, "And since this relationship is clearly a bigger piece of garbage than the Empire," and with that, I took the $500 cake, walked straight out the front door of our apartment, and carried it down the street to the nearest public dumpster. I didn't smash it. I didn't throw it. I simply, deliberately, and with immense finality, placed the entire custom-made 3-tier Star Wars cake right into the trash bin and walked away. I got into my car and drove to a friend's house, leaving my phone on silent. The floodgates opened over the next few hours. A relentless torrent of texts and calls from Sarah, starting with furious, angry attacks, blaming me for ruining her birthday, calling me immature and insecure, and then gradually shifting to tearful, manipulative pleas for me to come home. I ignored them all. I stayed at my friend's place for a week, gathering my resolve. When I finally went back to the apartment, it was only to pack a suitcase. We had a final, incredibly painful conversation where she doubled down, refusing to apologize for Mark's presence, only for my dramatic exit. She kept repeating, "We're just friends." I simply looked at her and said, "Friends don't make the man who loves them feel worthless, Sarah. And if he's just a friend, you wouldn't have prioritized him over my feelings. You know exactly what you did." The truth was, Mark's presence wasn't the problem. It was her dishonesty, her lack of respect, and her desperate need to keep one foot in the past. That was the true betrayal. I broke up with her that day. She cried, she begged, she even tried to use the buying a house dream against me, but my resolve was solid. The sight of that cake in the trash, that final definitive act of walking away from a massive investment I'd made in her, was the closure I needed. I moved out completely 2 weeks later. The fallout was messy. Shared friends took sides, and there was a whole passive-aggressive battle over furniture. But I kept my head down and focused on moving forward. I heard through the grapevine that Mark became a more permanent fixture in her life shortly after I left, proving my initial suspicion was right all along. It hurt, but the pain was manageable because I knew I hadn't lost her. I'd lost the idea of her. I lost the woman I thought she was, and the relief of escaping that lie far outweighed the sting of the breakup. The whole experience taught me a powerful lesson about self-worth and boundaries. Never let someone you love make you feel like a temporary placeholder. Never let your comfort be compromised for someone else's emotional vanity project. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for yourself is walk away, even if it means throwing away a perfect, expensive, custom-made cake that represented a future that was never going to be real. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but I wouldn't take it back for a second. The whole fiasco of the birthday party and the cake in the dumpster became my personal line in the sand, a public decisive statement that my respect was not negotiable. It was an expensive, sugary sacrifice, but it bought me my peace. So, that's the end of my story. The full, painful truth of how I learned the hard way that we're all adults now is often just code for "I'm going to disrespect you and expect you to take it." I know I made a huge scene, and it cost me a relationship I truly believed in, but I walked away with my dignity intact. Like this video if you were on my side and think she was completely out of line. Subscribe for more deeply personal and absolutely shocking stories like this one. And please, share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section below. Did I handle it right? Was the cake a symbolic masterpiece or a dramatic overreaction? Let me know. I'll see you all in the next story.